certainty that the original plan is something you, Dave, and many, many more people would have hated more than anything in life itself.
Look, moments like this are difficult, right? Everybody sort of goes into business for themselves.
Rock, I don't think you're a heel. I think you're an asshole. Haven't you been crying behind the scenes this whole time?
The Rock headlining WrestleMania was Roman Reigns, SoFi Stadium. That was locked.
What?
We were.
No way.
We were doing it. We were doing.
With WWE's WrestleMania 40 behind-the-scenes documentary being consistently delayed for increasingly suspicious reasons, speculation has run rampant online about why. Ostensibly, WWE claims they had so much footage from WrestleMania weekend, but they marketed a release date and released a trailer. Add to that the amount of times the key players have referenced it. Something's off here. So, with all of this rumor and innuendo, amidst the potential of The Rock angling for WrestleMania's main event spot against Cody next year in Vegas, things are getting interesting. The Rock's personal writer, Brian Gewirtz, appeared on the Busted Open radio show to give a timeline about the events and circumstances that led to the main event of WrestleMania 40. And man, what a doozy. Gewirtz is a former WWE writer, so it's not like he's never been around the block, but I wasn't there. Nobody was. But his explanation of this is contingent on, first off, stuff we have not seen, like this documentary. But a takeaway I have of this situation is, if The Rock is not an outright politician, he is, then he has got to be one of the least in-touch people to ever grace the sport of wrestling. Gewirtz is to be believed. Dwayne really thought he could just walk in and slot into WrestleMania's main event like a glove. Well, and if these plans are to be believed, he was originally fitting in a lot more like a spiked,
marital aid.
Yeah, that's the word I'm looking for. As the interview began, Mr. Gewirtz emphasized that The Rock had multiple abandoned plans to wrestle at WrestleMania, including at 39 in Los Angeles. He did mention something I found interesting, which was that match was derailed by an unnamed creative issue. He said that that's Rock's story to tell. That's a common thread throughout this interview, at least to me, which is a strange sense of foreboding, right? I've always believed The Rock's relationship with WWE and wrestling as a whole has never been peachy. This interview did absolutely nothing to change that perception.
There's a good chance that Rock and Roman might be a possibility for WrestleMania 40. This is, a year before. I said, what do you guys plan for WrestleMania 40? And he's like, well, as you saw, this is after WrestleMania 39, the day after. So Cody lost. The idea is to give him a solid year to, go through many trials and tribulations, starting with Brock, and then do the rematch at WrestleMania 40. I said, okay, great. Like, well, this might exist, just so you know. I'm just letting you know. You don't need to change anything. You don't need, because who knows? So many, that's, as you know, a year in advance, so many different things can happen. But just know in the back of your mind that he's thinking about it.
Gewirtz mentions that after WrestleMania 39, he asked the WWE what their plans were for WrestleMania 40, to which they told him Cody versus Roman. WWE had moved on. Gewirtz had this in mind, yet approached WWE on behalf of The Rock to advocate for the match at Mania 40. This was a year out. This becomes the pattern I notice. That being, Gewurz says simultaneously that everything The Rock does is multi-level, strategic, from the top of the People's Mountain, if you will. But then, he also says stuff like that Pat McAfee interview wasn't strategic.
Wasn't, this McAfee interview, it wasn't like a strategic, okay, we're going to cover this, and we're going to do it in a very elevated strategic way, and we're going to make sure that this is covered and this is covered. He was asked about, were you going to have to do WrestleMania? And he answered off the cuff, honestly. And I don't think it was designed to be like, all right, I need to give an answer, but I also need to put over Cody and the company, and I need to do, and like, no, we were talking about 39. I might do 40. I don't think he was, thinking anything more than, you're asking me a question, I'm giving you an answer.
I find this hard to believe when the biggest criticism of The Rock, particularly recently, is that his tendency is to feel like a walking billboard, scripted for maximum public approval. I can't even avoid him on my night walks. Maybe Gewurz is telling the truth, right? In that maybe he wasn't personally involved with the planning of this interview, but The Rock clearly went into that with an agenda. The Rock doesn't speak off the cuff. He's a smart guy, and he's got a carny edge and a Hollywood shark mentality that has helped him succeed. Look at when he goes on Joe Rogan's show, where he backpedals anytime there's anything negative. And hey, that strategic, all-encompassing chessboard strategy mindset, let's help make the UFL a success. Now back to the chessboard. By day one in the Jinder Mahal promo, Brian Gewurz claims it was
looking very much like a possibility that Rock and Roman was going to happen. And we had a meeting in Rock's, he rented a hotel room for the day in San Diego. It was me, Rock, Triple H, and Nick. And we talked about it all, Nick Khan. And we talked about it all. And Triple H was very, as you would imagine, aware and astute of the concurrent Cody storyline and brought that up.
My question is, on whose authority? He mentions Triple H was aware and astute of the Cody story. Oh yeah, I bet. He books this thing out for an entire year and you come in with this? You can't just drop this whole new thing in the lap of the booker, lead booker, who's at least had part of his job description be to undo the perception of WWE as having these Vince McMahon rewrites, the day of the show attached to it, and its reputation. So already, Triple H has been attempting to establish the WWE storytelling as something viewers can trust to make sense, at the minimum. Even if you don't like it, there is reasoning involved in the decision-making these days. Vince McMahon used to operate that way before, Alzheimer's and poop kinks went over on him. Which leads to another thing. The language Gewurz and the rest of Team Rock uses, like locked in, is like this headcanon from The Rock that just, it's good, man, we're locked in.
And at that point, we were like, okay, that gives us our answer. We're locked in. He did the TKO announcement. He went to WWE HQ. I have what ended up being 96 pages of merch and, t-shirt and title belt design ideas from creative services. And it was pretty much locked in at that point.
We're locked in. This is our answer. We're locked in, locked in, locked in. No, you're not. Once again, on whose authority? Title belt designs? I mean, was he going to dethrone Roman? Supposedly that was on the table at one point, and thankfully Roman shut that shit down.
But what everyone was talking about at the end of it was, should The Rock sit at the bar? Should he sit at the booth? Or should he sit at the head of the table? And that came about super late into our meeting in San Diego at the hotel. Because as we were talking about Cody, it was said, well, you know what? I hear you. Maybe we should do a little test polling of the audience, and not just the audience in San Diego, but the audience all over the world. What if I kind of teased it without saying it directly? We brainstormed on how to do that. He did it. And as you saw, the place went nuts, and, online went nuts. And maybe nuts is different degrees of nuts, in terms of, if you're a diehard Cody fan, you might be, hey, wait a second, what's he talking about here? But for the most part, it was overwhelmingly positive when he, teased head of the table. And at that point, we were like, okay, that gives us our answer. We're locked in.
For all of the Rock fans that were cheerleading this match before they went back to Cody, I remember the narrative that was created, that the Cody backlash was just online smarks, terminally online fan base, nothing to pay attention to. Yeah, sure. But let's not talk about the fact that they based the very decision of Rock versus Roman exclusively on focus groups and vague, undefined, positive feedback on socials. Yeah, unreal. LA Brain is unreal. Now, sure, I don't want to feed into any narrative about The Rock's potential loss of love, passion, or commitment to wrestling. But man, does he keep up with any of it?
I don't think the idea of people being, booing him bothered him as much as the narrative of, like, yeah, he just kind of, he got on the board and then just decided he's going to main event WrestleMania, when it was obviously well thought out well before then.
Because if he did, you'd think he would understand the optics.
The question, which I know you're going to ask, which everyone would ask and naturally ask, which is, okay, if all of that is the plan at this point in mid-January or whatever it is, why, for the love of all things holy, do you have Cody Rhodes win the Royal Rumble? That would be your question, right?
No, I don't have a question. Because that was the plan for 2 years before $7 Productions decided to get involved. I have no question because clearly it was a question asked and a question that was answered. Just because you have a headcanon that we were locked in with all the other Liddy bros, clearly this was never the case. Say this is true, like, the balls to just show up to some other place and go, hey, you know that thing you're cooking over there? I think that shit sucks. It doesn't have enough me in it. I know I don't own this restaurant or anything, but now that we're locked in on changing this recipe, let's go ahead and take that thing out of the oven that still has 15 minutes to go. Let's start over. Fuck that pie you guys have been baking. Dude, get real. This is that same Big Dwayne energy that, helped DC Films so much. And now Superman looks like he's wearing fucking pajamas, thanks to you.
So I would have to figure that the plan would be Rock and Roman and then Cody and Seth Rollins for the World Championship, correct?
Not exactly, but
oh boy.
Well, hang on, let me pause because he needs to breathe before he passes out. Also,
in full, transparency, I said even in San Diego in that meeting, I thought the cleanest thing to do if we're booking Rock and Roman is to have Punk win the Rumble and challenge Rollins, just because there's a difference storyline wise, in my opinion, of Cody wanting to finish the story and having earned the right to finish the story by winning the Royal Rumble. Once you win the Royal Rumble, that dynamic changes from I want to donate my hamstring to OG Anunoby so we could beat the Pacers in the playoff. That's not going to happen. But Cody winning the Rumble changes the dynamic completely because it goes from something that, yeah, we all want things, but now he's got it.
He already had that, dude. My God, these guys. Yes, Cody won the Rumble. He was guaranteed the legal right at WrestleMania because this was the plan for 2 years. You can't tell me that as far back as Cody Rhodes returning to the WWE in 2022, wholesale lifted from AEW, entrance music, moveset, attire, the whole 9 yards, personally signed by Vince McMahon himself. You cannot tell me after all of that and a carefully booked redemption storyline that they were just going to blow it all off for The Rock. That doesn't make any sense. Wirtz seems aware of this and talks about what he dubs the Birmingham incident.
If Cody himself somewhat endorses this idea, and paves the way for Rock and Roman. And if he does it, you know, in a confident kind of like, I know what I'm doing, everybody, and Cody certainly tweeted that, maybe not, but maybe the audience will go along with it.
What type of reaction were you hoping for from Cody? Because you're right, it was downtrodden. It didn't come off the way I'm sure everybody wanted it to be. But what was the reaction you were hoping would come across on TV?
I guess a little bit more, like I was saying, like steely confidence. And, you know, I'm playing chess, you're playing checkers, I'm one step ahead of you. You know, like when I say like a smile, I don't mean like a Randy Orton go out and smile and do your pose thing, which everyone hates, but more like, I got you, Roman, and I'm finishing my story and you're going to get fucked. And this is all going to work in the end type of thing. But again, it's, you know, Cody, this is why I say I don't blame Cody, because Cody and Rock, I know, sidebarred on this. I think Cody's attitude was, well, I don't like the decision, but I understand the business that could be done here. So I'll go ahead as best as I can do it. And he did it. And, you know, at the time, we certainly weren't thinking, oh my God, Cody ruined our brilliant creative, because all of us going into it, we're like, I don't know if this is going to work, but let's see what happens. And for a second, it seemed fine.
It wasn't fine. For a brand as genuinely obsessed with optics and carefully curated posts, brand deals, marketing, political opinions even, this is just such an obvious blunder. Which begs the question of incompetence versus malice. You'll often hear people who are angling for something, feign ignorance, play dumb. Oh, I didn't know. But if you ever had the pleasure and good fortune of watching Pat McAfee's show on ESPN, in between the mullets, sports ball discussions, overprocessed beer, obsession with the Attitude Era, and clear lack of a spiritual life, you'll notice on the show that The Rock was a big fan of promoting this potential matchup from his headcanon.
This is the beginning in 2022, and we broke out Terramana, we toasted life, toasted the business we love, and about an hour later, we started talking about the potential of what this match could be between myself and Roman Reigns and be on Mount Rushmore.
Super handsome.
Right? Super handsome, good dude, my cousin, family, amazing. We can have the match, but the bigger thought was, what can we do for the fans in this business that we love that will, where WrestleMania isn't the end of something, it's actually the beginning of something bigger.
Got it.
So
what happened?
So we got really, really close, but we couldn't actually nail what that thing was. We agreed, hey, listen, there is a merger coming up. Eventually that will happen. There's WrestleMania in Philadelphia.
Every so often, Cody Rhodes would fire back in response.
You mentioned The Rock. Nobody has asked me about The Rock because I think they're scared to ask me or don't want to be rude. Or I'll say this about The Rock, and you know, coming out on Pat's show, which I was watching live because I love Pat. What I would say is not flinching. If Rock's part of WrestleMania 40, that would be outstanding. He should be. It's The Rock, but I don't think he'll be in my spot.
And I feel like the rematch needs to take place where the original match took place. Just my gut. Is there a world where it doesn't happen there? Sure, perhaps. But in my lay down at night, go to sleep dreams, it would be at WrestleMania, especially because I love Philly so much.
As you can see, this was clearly a year-long political battle for the main event, which is why, in my mind, as a viewer, Cody's face the night of Birmingham recounted everything I just said in one succinct facial expression. A picture says way more than words ever can. But to The Rock's credit, he backpedaled. Gewurz did say the backlash was bigger than they expected. and The Rock left him a voice message suggesting that they completely flipped the script by turning him heel. He mentioned that he and Dwayne would often reminisce about how much better something would sound if it was a heel, confirming my belief that the heel character is more natural. The Rock character is always designed to be a heel one. From a historical perspective, The Rock was a heel character turned face, solely due to popularity. He said Dwayne wanted to pivot to the tag match as the main event, to which Bryan told him that they would have to do that on night one. Rock says he liked the idea as a throwback to WrestleMania 1, which had a tag match as the main event, as well as the imagery of a badass united Samoan front. From my perspective, I actually felt it was a pretty cool turn because it gave some level of credibility to the idea of the bloodline being stronger than ever, with Cody in real jeopardy. It added a ton of last-minute intrigue that swerved a potentially predictable outcome into the realm of uncertainty. As we all know, the final boss character is the best thing The Rock has done in decades, and it's cool to know that, at least according to Brian Gewirtz, The Rock was agile enough and talented enough to pivot and pull it off. I criticize him a lot on this channel, I do, but when something is good, it's good. And The Rock seems to be in the phase of his career where he's doing, some actual acting. So more power to him. God bless him. He's in his Keno era. And as you can see, The Rock is already angling for next year's main event. This time I get why, though. I like the idea that The Rock represents this existential threat to Cody Rhodes, hanging out in the background, hanging out in the boardroom, or as Hollywood sets, like this Samoan specter, just ready to strike when Cody is least expecting. I was initially hoping for more of a corporate bloodline situation, but it's becoming apparent in my mind that this long game thinking with Rock's presence in the WWE is something that goes way beyond this past year's WrestleMania and maybe even beyond next year's. The Bloodline's chaotic situation on SmackDown, where Solo Sikoa looks like the Wish or Temu version of The Weeknd, it's clear you can stretch their situation with Roman out for a long time. What I find most interesting about this situation is that despite the controversial and disruptive fashion in which The Rock came back to WWE, his presence has been seemingly accounted for and incorporated into the ongoing proceedings. I know that's the job of a good wrestling booker, but I suppose I'm just used to my two options being, DQ finishes inside Hell in a Cell and great matches. So as we close out, my takeaway is that this was a change and a pivot. Could make the argument that in this neo-kayfabe era, that anything is fair game to be considered a work. And I've made that argument in the past. It just seems this chaos is more along the lines of my original take on the situation. It's just that now that I have calmed down and saw the little sunlight, I can explain it a little bit more logically. But life changes a lot, Keno crew. And so, with that said, whatever you work, whatever's locked in, just keep it Keno, because life is cinema.